Death in care, regardless of how it comes about, especially if you've grown very close with the family, it's as if you're losing your own family.
Hi, I'm Tobi Ali Osman, founder of Smooth Digital, and this is Tea With Tobi, the podcast that shines a light on the care sector and helps businesses, staff, and care workers provide the very best care. The past year has been the most challenging in the history of the care sector. The UK care industry has experienced over 20,000 COVID-related deaths. Dozens of staff had died. Last June alone, nearly all of the COVID-19 related deaths were in care homes. So we decided for season 4, we want to shine a spotlight on 2020. We wanted to look at the timeline of events, analyze why 2020 was so difficult, highlight the incredible people who saved care, and understand what needs to be done for the care industry going forward. In the upcoming season, we will hear from carers, academics, CEOs, industry leaders, and analysts. We will get a first-hand account of life on the front line. We'll review the effectiveness of the government's response, and we'll discuss how the care industry has changed by the pandemic, what we can do to protect the sector for 2021, and most importantly, we will hear how the industry stood together in times of illness and social distancing, with solidarity and compassion. Please join me in this very special season of Tea with Tobi. On this special episode of Tea with Tobi, we have 2 guests. I wanted to get an insight of what life was really like on the front line directly from the mouths of carers themselves. So I spoke to living carer and trainer Zuva Chinhori and care assistant stroke founder of MeetMyBrian, which is a sponsor of Tea with Tobi, Jijo Jonny. In the first half of the show, we will hear Zuva relay her experiences of the past 12 months. She will explain why death in care feels like losing a family member and how damaging classifying care work as unskilled is to the sector. And in part 2 of the show, Jijo will inform us on what life was really like in care homes during lockdown, how MeetMyBrian can help solve the problem of visitation during a pandemic, and Jijo shares the horrifying story of when him, his wife, and newborn son all contracted COVID-19. But first, let's hear from Zuva and why she started a career in care. Zuva, great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so weird because I watch your podcast on YouTube. So to be on it, it's like such a surreal experience.
Awesome. I think we're going to learn so much from your perspective, and I think it really does need to be heard. So I'm excited myself as well. But let's start with this. Let's start with, why did you choose a career in care?
At the time when I started, so this was back in 2015. Previously, I had health problems. So this was between 2009 till about 2015. I was in and out of hospital a lot. And that experience of having people look after me showed me what good care looks like, because I believe those people looked after me very, very well. And then when it came to 2015, I did want to do something else with my life, because I'd done different jobs throughout, and I'd worked in warehouses and all that kind of stuff. Then I felt I really wanted to do something with myself that I would feel, what really actually matters.
Awesome. So let's rewind back in time. And if you can help describe the situation, let's say December of 2019, what was going on with work? How many people were you caring for?
At that time, so I was doing living care work. I'd sort of go from home to home. I wasn't with one client all the time. So I might do a few weeks here and then a few months there, that type of stuff. But at that time, in fact, all of 2019, I was going from different homes. And I wanted to do that to gain as much experience in living care as possible, work with different kind of clients.
Awesome. So the question, when was the first time you heard the words COVID-19?
COVID-19, I did hear it. We did hear it in around about December when it was being talked about in China. But in terms of as living carers, I don't think it was taken quite seriously until about February of 2020. In 2020, early parts of 2020. I think when we first heard about it, we just thought it's a thing happening in China. And, it's not gonna, we just thought it's a thing happening in China, really, nothing else. But it started being taken more seriously, particularly with like the agencies that I was working with around about February, I would say, 2020.
Yeah, I can agree with that. When are the so I try not to listen to the news as much as possible. So I think I heard about it in January of 2020, say about mid-January. I was in an open plan kitchen in the office. So we have a shared service office. I was actually overhearing someone else's conversation. And one thing that I did notice, there was absolutely no fear in their voice. They didn't seem worried, and it was quite dismissive as well. So I wonder if we all understood what this would be.
I can speak for myself, definitely not. I didn't see it. I mean, look, almost like 1 year later or whatever it is, we still here. I never would have thought this would happen. Definitely not.
How did it first affect your role, and how did it affect the people you cared for?
Initially, I think the big effects came when the first lockdown was announced, which was April, I think it was. Yeah, I was already in a placement, so I was quite okay because either way, the placement I was in, we weren't going outdoors anyways. So it wasn't that big a deal. But for some carers, a lot actually, they're sort of in a placement, let's say about to finish. And then they were asked, look, please, you're going to have to stay longer than you had planned for because it was safer to keep them there than bring in somebody else. So for some carers, they ended up working. I know one lady, she's finishing in January, at the end of this January, 2021. And she's been with this person since about, I think it was about May or something. So she had to just stay. So that's the big effect that it had. And then in terms of people who were receiving care, especially elderly people with dementia, some people you can explain to them that, oh no, this is what's happening. There's a lockdown, etc., but they still don't understand why they can't see their family. And I think for me, witnessing that's been the biggest effect. Forget PPE and all these other issues that were there. It's just the fact that people could no longer see their families and have that connection that they used to have before the lockdown. That was the biggest effect for people who were receiving care, especially elderly people, because they really rely on that family support and, even if it's friends, whatever, but people that they're close to, it's so, so important for them. And now because they couldn't visit each other as normal, that had a huge effect on a lot of people that I personally worked with.
So let's stay on this subject for a little bit. I think it was actually March the 16th, 2020, when the first lockdown was announced. So let's focus on that period. What was one of the most challenging times for you during that first lockdown?
I was quite lucky. The placement I had at that time, it was, again, like I said, an elderly lady who stays indoors all the time. So it wasn't so much a challenge from my perspective, but I know, like, speaking to other carers, they had bigger challenges because for them, they've got family members that they would have had. And this is a thing affecting everybody. So suddenly, okay, I'm here at work looking after somebody, but I don't know how my own family's doing. And that brought distress to people, especially people that have children.
So for the people that don't know about living care, this is literally carers who had a plan that they were going to stay for a period and look after someone. And then because of the lockdown, they were forced to stay there for an extended period and they couldn't go back to actually see their family.
Yeah. Whereas, I mean, the life of a living carer, yes, you're going to somebody's house for a week or months or whatever it is anyways, except this time there was no choice of having to leave. Eventually things did get better, but initially it was kind of like, look, everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. Please, can you just stay? And it just kind of made sense. But the distress still of not being able to see their own family members, that choice kind of been taken away from them temporarily. Even though it was a temporary thing, it still did bring a lot of people, anxiety and distress and that sort of stuff.
Must have been super tough. And what about the people you cared for? So around the time of the lockdown, that's when things really dialed up, from a social distancing element, PPE element, isolation element. How did it impact the people you cared for?
The people we cared for, it was more, especially I think if you're working with people with dementia, because I remember I had a lady at one point who had vascular dementia, which meant that her short-term memory was sort of going. So, I mean, you could have a conversation and she understood whatever we're talking about, but just not understand, why am I not seeing my daughter again? Why is she not here? And then constantly having to repeat that to them, because obviously her short-term memory is gone, but then also them feeling in the moment, they might be able to understand what you said, that, oh yes, there's a lockdown, so she can't come, because this is what's happening all over the country. But eventually you start to see them feel like it's being prevented from them, that, they're not being allowed to see their family, not because they've understood what you said, but for them, it actually begins to feel like it's a punishment. One of the things that personally made me upset, or just watching that, is how difficult it was for them to not see their family that they're used to seeing all the time, or even your neighbor not popping in so frequently. Those small changes made a big difference, especially to elderly people, because routine is so important for them.
So have you got any examples of where some of your colleagues or yourself went really above and beyond within providing the very best care you can during that period?
I think the most people did was really getting people connected, because a lot of elderly people, like Facebook and video technology, that's like a whole different world for them. So I really saw a lot of people making sure that, look, what can we do to keep people connected to their families? And so if it meant people teaching people how to use Facebook, or how to use WhatsApp for video calls, whatever it was, I saw a lot of that. And then for me personally, I remember, like, it wasn't even necessarily to do with the virus. It was just because I was like, this would be a good idea. So this lady, it was her 94th birthday. I promise you, this is the fittest lady you've ever met. She's so healthy. Like, she's healthier than me. So her 94th birthday was coming up, and her family's all over the country. And then she had a sister as well who was up north. And at that time, up north was kind of getting a lot of cases. And I thought, okay, look, what can I do to, obviously they can't celebrate her birthday together, all these family members. And it was just a case of, going on Facebook to look for this relative, got her grandchildren involved, great-grandchildren involved, everybody. I was like, can you just send me a video to my WhatsApp, put it all together for her, and then gave it to her on the morning of her birthday, because she was convinced. She was like, look, I'm not going to see my family. Really wanted to see her great-grandbaby, he's 2 years old. And I was like, okay, so I know I can get these people together somehow. Let's get this video going. And just seeing her face on that morning, for them, it was something they would have never thought about. That, actually, I can still stay connected with my family this way. But those things, there was a lot of examples like that, of a lot of people just helping people stay connected, because that's probably what was needed the most, more than anything else.
So I want to talk to you about the Clap for Carers initiative. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, no, it's you know what? From a positive perspective, it's nice to see carers being celebrated, because for a long time, if you looked at the media, anything that was around carers, support workers, whatever, was always the negative stuff, like abuse. If you look at even things that happen on the BBC, shows on the BBC, documentaries of hospitals and care assistants or nurses being bad, it was all negative, negative, negative. So for the first time, it was nice to see care workers being celebrated, and people recognize that actually they are such a vital part of our society as a whole. Forget COVID, but as a society, it was nice to see people celebrating that, you know what, these people are a vital part of, the world, the country we live in, So for me, it was nice to see that, because I've never seen, well, in my time, or maybe I just don't know enough, but I've never seen carers being celebrated. We can hear doctors or nurses or whatever, but not sort of the low level, workers being supported. So for me, yeah, that was a nice thing to see, for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on something you just mentioned when you gave the example of doctors and lower level staff. Now, you've been in care for a number of years and you know how challenging it is. What do you feel about when the government categorize care work as low skilled?
If you'd asked me this question in the beginning, or like before I had much experience, I would have taken quite a lot of offense to that. But now, as I've had more experience and matured, also in my perspective, I think it's simply a case of if you've never experienced something, it's like I don't know what it's like to do what you do. I might say, oh, this is not a necessary thing, because I don't know what's required of it. So that opinion is coming from a place of no experience, because anybody who's experienced this will tell you this is by far not a low skilled job at all. So it's a case of I can take offense or realize that no, these are just people that don't know better, and are probably judging it based off, I don't know, metrics, or, if you haven't got a degree for this, or if you haven't got that, then it doesn't mean it's a skill. But actually, if you look at the things required to be a really good living carer, empathy, these are things that top level companies are training their companies for now. They're soft skills.
Absolutely.
And it comes naturally to us. So I'm like, look, now it's like, they can say low skill, this and that, but I know, look, this is beyond anything. It's not low, it's not low skill at all,
Absolutely. And there are many people, leaders of care associations who are really rallying on and pushing that message onto the government to sort of change that perception. So it's just so refreshing hearing that from you. So, in the sector, there is a recruitment and retention issue. And one of the things that we've seen with our clients as well is we really do try to encourage, look outside of the sector to bring more people in, instead of just recycling the same batch of carers who are maybe job hopping and had a terrible experience. And we've actually seen statistically that the companies that employ carers from outside of the sector, give them some good training, give them love, they actually stay longer and they remain in the sector. And it's so fulfilling. It's something that I guess they wouldn't experience until they actually done the role.
Exactly.
I want to play devil's advocate at the same time, because it definitely is fulfilling, but it's really challenging. In terms of, did you ever or your colleagues experience any coronavirus related deaths?
Personally, not myself, but just hearing in my, I've got a large community on Facebook where people talk about the challenges they're going through. And there have been some carers who have talked about what's happened and losing people to the virus, people they were caring for, or a family member or somebody they were caring for, that type of stuff. So yeah, we've seen that happen. Like death in care, regardless of how it comes about, it will, especially if you've grown very close with the family, it's as if you're losing your own family member. And it's also, again, scary, because especially if people who were thinking, oh no, this virus thing, it's not real. And then suddenly you're told, oh, this person's passed away because of coronavirus. It hit home, it hit home for a lot of people, and just making it real that, look, nobody is safe from this thing. That's kind of like the general conversation that was going on in our community.
It's heartbreaking. And I had, in my extended family, 2 uncles who passed away. And like you say, it it does become such a reality when, previously when you would hear the news and they say, deaths are going down, it's only down to 300. You think, okay, that's good, deaths are going down. But knowing that within that number, there's friends and there's family in that, it becomes so real. And you just really get to,
yes,
realize, wow, these are lives in the hundreds and the thousands right now. So looking forward a little bit, what sort of constructive things or lessons learned do you think were received from this pandemic and experience?
It's actually something Matt Hancock said. He did a speech at the Royal College of Physicians or something? And he talked about the 7 lessons learned. For me, that was one of the best speeches ever. And he listed the 7 things they've learned from this pandemic, which I'll just grab it for a second. Yeah, he was speaking at the Royal College of Physicians in July. And lesson 1 was value our people. And okay, what he says is, the first is that we must value our people and trust them as professionals. Okay, and then he goes on to say a little bit more. And what he's talking about, he's not talking about, like I said, just doctors and nurses. He says, and when I say people, I mean all of our people, care workers, porters, cleaners, clinicians, leaders. So the whole sector, valuing them and seeing them as professionals. Hearing that kind of stuff, coming from government level, for me is it's a positive thing. It's inspiring. It gives me hope because for years, we've not really seen the government's position, or they've not really taken, the low level people as skilled or whatever you want to call it.
Basically, it's the word low level. It was hurting me a little bit. I think I've got a colleague in the space that talks about how powerful language is. And I think although it's, been perceived, I'm doing quotation marks for anyone that's listened to the audio, as low level, we should change the language to just, frontline staff and, valued care staff. We need to just change the language and change the perception, because this is a time in history. And right now, these are the heroes. These are the heroes.
It's true. There is a stigma associated with the term carer. And I think that comes from the fact that care has been reduced. When people hear the word carer, all they think of is changing incontinence pads, helping somebody to the toilet. That's it. When there's so much more to it, So, yeah.
So where can people learn more about Zuva? I'm sure you might get quite a lot of people reaching out to you, carers, living carers. And also, I think some care providers would love your perspective and fresh insight as well. So where can people get in contact with you?
Facebook. I'm very, very heavily on Facebook if it's for like carers. And I've got a YouTube channel as well, that I sort of post videos. But then again, that's more carer related. If care providers wanted to get in touch with me, I'm very big on LinkedIn. So not big. I'm not big on LinkedIn. I am available on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. Zuva, thank you so much. It's been refreshing. It's been so useful hearing your perspective. And I'm sure the listeners will get a load of value from this. So Zuva, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Toby.
I think Zuva's statement that there is a stigma around the word carer is so telling. Despite how much the country relies on the vital work carers do, it amazes me how we continue to lack respect for living carers. What living carers like Zuva have gone through in the past year is unbelievable. And I also wanted to learn what it was like to be a frontline worker in a care home. Although Jijo Jonny is the founder of our sponsor MeetMyBrian, he's also a care worker and was called to return to homes in the last 12 months due to staff shortages. I wanted to learn more about MeetMyBrian and what working in care homes during a pandemic was actually like. But first, let's hear more on Jijo's background in care.
Thank you, Toby. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Awesome. So you can give the listeners a bit of background on your career history and an insight into how you got into the world of care.
Yeah, sure. I came to the UK in 2009 to do my BSc Nursing in the University of Northampton. At the time, I started working as a care assistant in one of the nursing homes. It was an elderly care home in Northampton. I became a qualified nurse in 2013. So it will be about 12 years in the care home sector. I'm working for this coming 2021 September, so that will be 12 years. I only worked in care home sector. I didn't work in hospital, or I also had an opportunity to go and work outside the care home sector, especially when I completed my MBA. But I always thought there is something for me to do in this sector. And here I am. And to MeetMyBrian, it was just a part of my journey, and I believe that is going to be something useful for the care home sector from now on.
So what is the background and backstory of MeetMyBrian? How did it come about?
MeetMyBrian, you see, I as I said, I work in this sector since 2009 as a care assistant. Even as a care assistant, as a nurse, then you see the family connections in care home, the number of times they come to visit. So when I came to the UK, I saw the family connections, the love, towards the elderly is beyond what I knew. And I was so shocked and amazed about the intimacy between the family members. And it's not a dumping place for them to, put once they're elderly. So they always kept that connection going. And when this COVID pandemic hit the nursing home and they closed the door, I couldn't believe myself that I'm working in a nursing home, because it was totally new to me. Because it has never happened. I can't say that there was a day that I didn't see any relatives, or at least one family member will come to see their family members in nursing home. So when it's completely stopped, I started thinking about what's going to be the future. Because I was sure right from the beginning the whole world was stopped and going into lockdown. I thought it's not a simple thing, it's gonna take some time to get back to normal. So how are we going to manage the family connection? So at the time I thought we need to have a system, and that was a time that I spoke to Pat, Brian's wife, and I got the name, but that was the idea. So it's just a pandemic. The separation from the families made me to think about having a system for the care home sector.
And what does the system do, briefly?
Before, the care home never closed their doors to relatives. They could come in any time and they could visit their family members whenever they want to. But because we got this, the risk of COVID-19, and elderlies are very vulnerable of contracting it and dying from it, so we can't have that old system. But that's what I believe, so we will be having like a controlled visit. So they will have to make an appointment. They come and we will do the risk assessment. We'll ask them some questions, doing the temperature and all those things. So that process could be cumbersome, especially when they're going to make the phone calls, and everybody needed sort of like a freedom, so they might make an appointment to come and see their mum or dad, or brother or sister or daughter or son, today at 11 o'clock, but then something else come up. So maybe they will phone up and say sorry, we can't come. So all these things is going to create a lot of problems inside the home, because the staff shortages and the level of care required by the residents and the staff, they need to get them ready and bring them down to the visitors board or in a visitors room, and all those things could create a lot of problems. So, but the MeetMyBrian is going to solve all these cumbersome processes, having like an online facility. They can just book it online, so the staff can see on the other side who is coming and whether they have done the risk assessment completed or not, whether they have been tested or not, and all those things would say. So that's what MeetMyBrian is going to do.
And what's the inspiration behind the name?
Brian is one of the residents that I looked after at the time. Pat, the families were constantly on the call, on the phone, and asking how they are doing and everything. So this lady always asked, when do you think I can come and meet my Brian? How is my Brian? So that my Brian is word that, to me, that was quite catchy. And seeing their relationship, that love between them, and every possible opportunity she could come and see him, and he was so happy to see her, that kind of thing. So there was a beautiful love story. So I thought that's the best name to have it.
Well, actually, I'll be interested to know, when was the first time you heard the words COVID-19?
I heard COVID-19, but I wasn't really bothered about it because I heard about Ebola, I heard about SARS, I heard about dengue, and it's a plenty of things, and Nipah virus in a place. But I never bothered because in our mind, like, we know that, oh, okay, it's there, it's in Africa, it's in China, it's in that place. I'm not going to be affected. That's what my thoughts are. So I heard briefly about COVID-19 in December. I must admit that I wasn't paying a lot of attention towards the news and everything at the time, because I hope you know that I had another startup, Gianna Care, which I thought would be going live in February or March, at that time. So I was sorting out the final paperwork and things. I was quite busy at the time, but I wasn't really paying attention a lot towards the kind of the impact this virus is having. I was a bit late to understand how it is messing our world. My wife, we were suspecting that, she's pregnant at the time. So she was having rest, and she had plenty of time to read all these things and going through, to listen to all this news and things. So she was quite updated, and me was a bit slow to understand about COVID-19. But I think I understand the seriousness by the beginning of January.
And what was the moment that you realized this thing was really serious?
When I don't see any relatives in the care home for a few days, and I think that is the time I really understand how tough that situation is, how difficult and how serious it is.
So as we got moved into March, the official lockdown happened. What was the reaction from the residents?
Where I worked at the time, 2 or 3 homes, it's like a mild dementia. The people, I clearly remember one resident losing that the memory altogether. She couldn't understand what is going on, especially at the time they were that nursing home worked isolating the resident inside a room. They didn't bring them to the lounge. That continued for more than a week or something, and that was something I felt that serious, because they had a kind of like a routine coming to the lounge and participating in activities and seeing other residents and everything, and suddenly being in the room. I think that was something seriously affected, but I think it was only for like 1 week, 2 weeks, and at the time, because there were no clear guidance at the time. Then I think because when I worked in a different home at the same time, I didn't see that kind of this thing, because the residents were coming to the lounge and everything. But so the nursing homes were managing in their own discretion at the time, and because if they had like a flu-like symptom, and they were doing isolating and that kind of thing. So yeah.
For the people that are not aware, what was the government guidance at that time?
I think there was a lot of confusion, especially towards like the PPE. Even the government was saying the mask is not really necessary. I was working as a bank staff in one of the care homes at the time. So I was doing one shift. I remember one staff came with a mask, and the nurse in charge at the time, she said, you cannot work with the mask, because at the time it was not mandatory, and she bought it from there. And it was a bit weird, because we were about 5-6 people and only one person with a mask, and that person has bought it with it. So the nurse was saying you cannot wear the mask. But we can't blame anybody at the time, can we? Because nobody knew what to do. And at the time, even the government wasn't really strict about the mask. Many people thought that it is not going to stop spreading or anything. Some people that the mask is spreading the virus if you're just wearing it and you're taking it to the another person, so you are carrying the virus. That's what the general assumptions were.
Yeah, there was a period of time when is the mask mandatory? At the beginning it wasn't, and then that later changed. When do you think you realized as a person the importance of mask, or that is going to stop the spread of virus? I first learned about COVID quite late in January of 2020. And
I was a bit earlier than you.
Yeah, that's right. And at that time, I was overhearing a conversation in our shared. In our open plan office, we've got a shared kitchen, so other businesses were there. They were having a conversation, and at that point, I thought, I'm gonna just buy a couple of masks for the team, and I just thought to buy them just to have them just in case. And I think I got the idea from one of the company directors. So. But I didn't think it was serious until around February for me, when I was going to celebrate my mum's 60th. We were going off to Jamaica, and they closed the borders. And I thought, okay, this thing is really serious.
When was that?
That was in February. In February, Jamaica closed the borders earlier than, say, the UK. And I realized, okay, this is really affecting our lifestyles now, the whole family.
But do you think at the time that same level of seriousness have given to the care homes at the time? Like, they closed the borders, we stopped the visitors coming, the carers, in the nation. But do you think that the precautionary measures need to be taken in care homes, and the PPEs and everything it was not much there in care homes, was it?
From the clients I work with, there wasn't, from what they've said, there wasn't that much guidance at all.
There you go. That's what
people were figuring it out. I would say the closer we got into March, clients were telling me that the prices has shot up substantially. What type of mask should we get? It was a lot of confusion. There was a hell of a lot of confusion. So as we move through the sort of timeline, March, April, May, what were some of the things that people didn't see that was going on in homes that probably wasn't reported in the media? What were some of the really heartbreaking stories that you experienced through working with many different care homes?
I would say like that missing, seeing that their family members impacted their emotionally. I can tell you that from my experience, more than 2 or 3 residents, and how much they deteriorated, having not having that the regular visit that they enjoyed. So there is a limit the staff can do to take that isolation away from the residents. That's how I've seen it. We have a limit, because their relatives, their families, their husband, their mother, whoever, that is a totally different relationship. Seeing them, talking to them is a different feeling, isn't it? So missing that had a severe impact on residents. I can clearly say that.
And what about yourself? So during that period, other people were locked down in their homes, maybe working from home, but you on the front line going out every day. How was that for you? And did your sort of loved ones have any concerns with you going out, effectively potentially risking your life on a daily basis?
With all fairness, it was horrible, because my wife was pregnant at the time, you see, and I think India, they are in India, my parents are in India, overreacted. Not overreacted, I mean, they were suddenly they've just closed, enforced a lockdown. So the reason I'm saying, because my parents were very worried about at the time, because my wife was pregnant. The situation in India, they were dealing in a completely different way, but in the UK it was a bit more like a relaxed approach, and they're asking what kind of the protection PPE we have, and we didn't have any. But whereas in India, where the people were working, they're all covered up, you know what I mean, in the white gown and the helmets and all those things. There was a different kind, and ours was totally different in here when we work in here. So everybody was, and even my colleagues were saying, you have to be really careful because your wife is pregnant, and she also had a couple of miscarriages before, So that was emotionally quite difficult. So that is a difficult time. How did I deal with it personally? I don't know. I was just get going, not thinking a lot about it, and being cautious at work, hand washing and telling the staff to make sure that they do every possible thing to avoid this transmission and kind of thing. So there was nothing else. Just having that confidence and get going.
And we commend you and all the other frontline staff for the brave work you guys have done. You guys are the true heroes. So what was your thoughts of the Clap with Carers initiative?
Clapping for carers. I really like that thought. The people just coming out. It was on every Thursday, wasn't it? And coming out and clapping their hands for all the healthcare workers and frontline workers, and it was good. It was a good feeling. But to be frank, what I noticed that being a carer, I'm only talking about Nursing Army. I'm not talking about any other frontline and any other thing. Being a carer in a nursing home, it's not that easy, and it's a hard work, and especially when you got the short staff and everything. But I don't think the care is being valued enough, in the care home sector. And all of a sudden, everybody's calling them heroes. But then, if you talk about, so how many care staff go extra payment? At least, I'm not talking about money, but how many of them go extra payment? That's like, okay, we appreciate the work. I think clapping hands were too easy. Let's say that. Oh, I like that. So I think it's as I said, it's a nice thought. I'm not saying that, but the carers, the workload, even and the work atmosphere and everything go even worse during the pandemic. But even before, as I said, they need a bit more recognition and everything. At least even we say like, okay, that is a class that's like a skilled work. Still not, is it? So I like that concept of clapping for for the carers, for the frontline staff. But I think the care staff in the nursing homes need to be valued a bit more. That is one of the changes.
No, that's a great point, and you were very frank there. And let's be frank. Yeah. Previously, there was no mention of frontline workers and care staff specifically. All of a sudden, people are coming out. It's all right. It's okay. All of a sudden, people were coming out and clapping their hands. So let's just talk about what would people truly want? What truly needs to change to truly value care staff?
I mean, to me, like I started my career as a care assistant. I told you, in 2009, and I said they are the force actually determine the quality of care in the nursing home. The manager's role is to guide them, to lead them. And the senior management role is to set their vision as a company and get going. But the actual people who can who can make the difference in the resident's life are the care staff. It's not enough. We need to have more energy and investment put towards the care staff to change their to their attitude and to develop a good culture in a care home. That's what I believe.
I hope it's okay if I share. You also contracted COVID-19, and your wife as well, and your newborn.
Yeah.
Which is, when you told me, I was so shocked. And I'm sure it must have been horrific in that at home as well. So just tell us a little bit about that experience. How did it happen? How did you find out? What was going on behind closed doors?
Yeah, there is one employer that I do bank shift, so I go and help her, and I know that home very well. Because I was busy with MeetMyBrian at the time, I was not doing a lot, I was just only go and do it only when I don't have any presentations and things like that. So they had an outbreak at the time. Most of the staff went on sick. So she asked me to come and cover a few shifts because she couldn't get any, the nurses at the time. And they had to bring many agency staff from outside to cover, the staff who went on sick. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know that period, there was loads of care staff who were shielding.
Yeah.
So we needed new care staff to come in. So you went into support.
Yeah, so I'm talking about in December, this December, so it's the second wave, So I didn't expect that I would get it, but I got it. Then my wife got it, and my son got it. It was a hard and horrible time. It's not just for me. I'm also talking about the organization at the time, because more than 95% of the staff worked in there also got this COVID at the time. So you see, dealing with that fear of, you got COVID and you have to be careful, and you got this wife to look after and a little boy. My wife had a temperature more than 39.5, and at the same time, my son also had a high temperature. So I was not in a position to move, from my bed, because it's a heavy back headache, heavy body pain, and you can't even expect anybody to come and help you because they can't enter into your house, and and you don't have much of family here. So it was a very difficult situation, Tobi. I tell you that.
How many months old was your little boy at the time?
4.5. Yeah, 4.5 months. Yeah, he had that temperature, and that was a bit worrying. Yeah, so we had to call 111 and get their advice.
That must have been super terrifying. So I having a newborn alone is a challenge for, parents, let alone having COVID-19. And we're recording this in February of 2021. We're in another national lockdown. What do you think needs to be done differently this time to protect more lives?
I would say the one thing is that we have to live with this virus for some time, for considerable long time. So we need to try and address the issues pragmatically, and evidence based. I think it's all about living with this virus and finding the practical way to manage the economy and our life.
And if you had a seat at the table and could speak to Boris Johnson, what would you tell him about the care sector?
During these 33 years of my life, what I have realized is that loving somebody unconditionally, caring for other people unconditionally is hard. It's not easy. I was reading a blog, and it was quite fascinating because they say more than 60% of the people of the workforce are disengaged. So imagine that you performing a caring job and that person is disengaged. So what we need is that you could be working in a petrol station, you could be working in a store, you could be disengaged, but you can still do that job. A skilled job, in a way, it's a lot of things. A resident could be having that dementia and having this anxiety attack. How much time you are genuinely spending with that patient to reassure them, and how much can you do it if you are disengaged? Do you know what I mean? You could take one thing from the shelf and give it to a customer. You could be 100% absent-minded, or maybe 95% disengaged. You can still do it. You put that price on the till and somebody just tapped their car. It's processed a payment. You could be thinking thousands of things in your mind at the time. Do you know what I mean? But when you're really reassuring somebody, when you are trying to spend some time and make one patient to eat and drink, with that intention to improve their nutritional intake, or to reassure them, to help them to calm down, that is not easy. That's all I'm trying to say. So what we need is a good workforce, and we need good people. We need to spend some time, and the supervision is supposed to be done in a way that that we need that change, that we desperately need that change in that sector. It's not just to Boris Johnson, it's to everybody. But to Boris Johnson at a government level, I would say we need to class that as a skilled job, and we need to invest a lot of time and energy in there to making and creating a workforce that is that is caring and compassionate.
I completely agree with Jijo and Zuva. We need to acknowledge the work carers have done in the past year with more than just clapping. We need to recognise them as skilled workers who make an indispensable contribution to thousands of lives on a daily basis. And we need to remunerate them accordingly. Zuva, Jijo, thank you so much for your brave and important work over the past year. And thank you at home for joining me on the show. Next week on the podcast, I meet Vic Rayner, the Executive Director of the National Care Forum. Vic and I had a fascinating conversation where we delve into her experience of the pandemic and how the National Care Forum responded. We discuss how important technology was for the sector, and Vic explains why we need a care home soap opera. Before we go, there's just a few quick notes. Make sure you subscribe to the Tea With Tobi podcast so you automatically get notified about new episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. I want to know more about you and what you all think of the show, so be sure to send me your comments at tobi@teawithtobi.com. Please check out our website, teawithtobi.com, where you can find out more about me, Tobi, our sponsor, MeetMyBrian, and what we do at Smooth Digital. I've started a newsletter that goes straight into your inbox. So do sign up at our website as well at teawithtobi.com. You've been listening to Tea With Tobi, the podcast presented by me, Tobi Eliosman, and produced by One Fine Play. From One Fine Play, James Bishop is the executive producer. Kazra Feruzia is the audio and visual engineer. Connor Foley is the producer and researcher. Additional creative support from Selena Christophers, Jade Cornish, and Miranda Lopez. This episode was recorded by Connor Foley. Thanks for listening to Tea With Tobi.